Welcome to the Oracle Scroll. My name is Kevin Walder, and I am your host, and I invite you to join my guests and myself as we discuss all things metaphysical. Welcome to episode 9 of the Oracle Scroll. In this episode, we're going to be looking at card number 6 in the Major Arcana, the Lovers. And then we will take a look at an article that I wrote some time ago, and it is very pertinent today as well, about not letting our butts get in the way. A play on words, but it's interesting. And then we'll answer a question from Olivia, who has a question about her relationship in the final segment. So please join me, Kevin Walder, your host, as we explore the Lovers. First of all, the Lovers. This is what I wrote about the Lovers in my book, Tarot for Lunch, Lessons from the Cards. The Lovers card is one of the Major Arcana, and whenever Major Arcana cards appear in a reading, they tend to carry a greater punch, a bit more weight than the Minor Arcana cards. When the Lovers card shows up in a reading, I see it as representing choices coming up. As with all the cards, there are various messages to be derived depending on the question being addressed. The Lovers card may be a nudge to make a decision, or it could be advice to slow down, make sure one has all the pertinent information upon which to base a sound decision. In some older decks, this card is called the Two Paths or the Twin Paths, and thus its predominant meanings of choices. The Lovers card may also speak of love, commitment, attachment, relationships. In most decks, there are 3 figures included, which indicates the need for and availability of guidance in the process of making wise choices. This card speaks to us of the things we hold most dear in our lives and of making good choices to preserve them. The Lovers card reminds us to be grateful and appreciative of those who share our lives and commitments, and ask us to choose how we will enhance those relationships in our lives. We all face many choices daily, and some can be life-changing, while others may be as simple as a choice of outfit. Contemplating our choices and how they may affect our future is worthy of our attention. As I often point out, the choices we make about those we allow into our most intimate lives are the most important ones we make. Products can be returned. A bad buying decision can be corrected. But the choices about those with whom we share our dreams and passions are much more difficult to move past. This card represents commitment and attachment, as well as relationships in our lives. Finding the balance is important and requires us to choose what really matters in our lives. Giving too much attention to a less important decision can be distracting us from the big picture and the important decisions in our lives. Sometimes we can allow ourselves to become so confined by insignificant decisions that we fail to take the appropriate action on bigger choices, bigger decisions in our lives. This is where defining our question becomes most important. When I see the Lovers card appear in a reading, it tells me that the querent needs to focus on the important choices before him or her at this very moment. We are each responsible for the choices we make, and this card reminds us to embrace the process and make informed decisions and choices in our lives. The Lovers card can also speak about a relationship which needs attention and nurturing. If the reading is centered on a relationship question, the appearance of the Lovers will be a power boost to all the cards around it and indicate that we are, in fact, right on the right track. So the questions that are posed by the Lovers What commitment commands the most attention in our lives? This will be a different answer for everyone. What commitment commands the most attention? And what attachment demands too much of our attention? That's a big one. That's a huge question for a lot of us. And how will we choose what stays and what goes? And that was lifted directly from my book, Tarot for Lunch, Lessons from the Cards, available now in both paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com. And now, as has become our custom here at the Oracle Scroll, we'll take another in-depth look at the card, the Lovers. This is something that I wrote, and we'll see how it plays out. Gives us a little closer understanding of the character of the card. So, as the couple depicted on the Lover's card, this is a message directly from them. As the couple depicted on the Lover's card, we want to explain some of what you are seeing when you draw this card. We will also address the various meanings that are carried by this card. The most common image of us is the one used in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, in which we are depicted beneath and in front of a large tree. Male and female, we are nude and embracing each other. The tree has two distinctive sides and thus alludes to the recurring theme of balance in all things. Both sides of the tree appear to be deciduous, with the feminine side producing fruit. Sometimes a serpent is also present, which ties in with the biblical story of Adam and Eve in the garden. The tree then becomes the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. As a couple, we are depicted with a halo of serenity surrounding us, with the masculine figure holding the sun and the feminine figure holding the moon. Directly above us is a bright light, perhaps a star. We appear to be aware of its presence, but not particularly fixated on it. In some other versions of this card, an angelic figure peers down upon the couple and appears ready to impart guidance as needed. In some depictions, all three characters appear in the foreground and depict the masculine figure making a difficult choice between two feminine figures. This alludes to the meaning of choices often given to this card. The next thing to notice is where the attention of each character is placed. In most depictions, the masculine figure is gazing at the feminine figure, while the feminine figure is gazing at an unseen point above or beyond the couple. This seemingly simple depiction speaks of the masculine fixation on the physical and the feminine fixation on the spiritual. This talks about the raw basics of nature and in no way indicates that the two figures cannot possess aspects of the other in their personalities. How do we come to represent choices in the major arcana? Well, many early decks call this card the two paths or the twin paths, indicating a choice to be made. We are associated with the astrological sign of Gemini, the twins, indicating there are always two sides to every undertaking and many choices to be made. What more important choice do any of us make than when we choose a mate with whom to share our lives? Other meanings associated with the Lovers are commitment and bonding. You'll see this theme highlighted in some depictions of us depending on the view and understanding of the artist. Some will show us in the throes of passion, while others may depict us in a serene scene of blissful togetherness. Either way, it does indicate that at some point a choice has been made to be together. Again, this is entirely up to the understanding of each individual artist. Our planetary attribution is Mercury, the messenger, and our elemental attribution is air. This indicates that this choice is less about passion and more about calculating the best move for each of us. Though the name may lead some to believe that the commitment and devotion symbolized here excludes all but romantic relationships, but that is simply not the case. Choices may revolve around a parent or a child or even a sibling in certain circumstances. Sometimes our most challenging choices may not involve other humans at all. Sometimes it's a job or a home. Whatever we hold most dear is the thing which will be most difficult when it comes to making a choice. We are sometimes associated with the Hebrew letter zayin or zain, which means sword. With any choice comes a severing or cutting away of the choice not taken, so that sword in symbolism is appropriate here. We're also connected with the rune sen or ken, which means openings. Just as the sword above removes the item not chosen, so openings are created by making the correct choices in life. From a numerologic view, we are card number 6. The other 6 in the major arcana is the devil, number 15. This can help us to understand the meaning of the lovers even more when we realize that with every positive choice, a negative choice is removed. So it's a double blessing. Making a positive choice eliminates a negative choice. So it's a double blessing. We are speaking of life-changing choices here, not just mundane daily decisions. When you think of us, please keep in mind that we represent your free will and reasoning power, bringing your heart and mind together to cooperate in a meaningful way in life. We also encourage you to examine past choices and how they are functioning now in your life. Do they need to be revisited and revised? Are there elements which need to be redefined in order to get the most from your past choices? Is some part of a past choice demanding too much time, too much effort, and way too much maintenance to make it a viable choice going forward? Is there a relationship which is crying for attention at this time? How would life be different if we took more time and care in making choices? So, however you see us, or however your deck depicts us, we are here to remind you of the fact that we each have the power to transform our lives through proper choices. Making wiser choices requires us to bring in our hearts and our minds, our emotions and spirit to the process. The energy of this card is all about commitment, attachment, and relationships. Happy choosing. And that is a look at the Lover's card, card number 6 in the major arcana of the tarot. In the second segment of each episode of the Oracle Scroll, we take a subject that is pertinent for current events, perhaps, and explore it from a spiritual standpoint. And today I'm using an article that I wrote some time ago when I was faced with a very serious decision. And it goes along, it's very pertinent even today. We are all facing similar kinds of decisions. So this article is called When Your Butts, B-U-T-S, in quotes, Get in the Way. Kind of a play on words. My mother used to have a little saying for most everything that came up in life, most of which I would not use here, but some were quite amusing and sometimes even insightful. In drawing on this heritage of pithy sayings, I've titled this piece, When Your Butts Get in the Way. In my own experience, I have found that my buts are very potent obstacles to my progress. Perhaps you too have struggled with your buts and found them winning when you wanted a different outcome. Recently, I set a very aggressive goal for myself and my career. At the time, I felt sure of myself and relieved that I had finally come up with a worthy goal for changing my life. Almost immediately, the buts started to encroach on my newfound joy, and I began to doubt my resolve. This particular group of buts was especially powerful because it dealt with a midlife career change. Some of them were, but what about the money? But what about the health insurance? But what if? But what about the 401k? But what about my home life? Oh, and the big one, but am I ready for this? You can see that these are all powerful buts, and any one of them could be a big enough obstacle to stop me dead in my tracks. None of these can be dismissed as unimportant. They are all real concerns, and they represent things which must be addressed to allow progress. So now, with all these buts in my way, what am I to do? How will I address them in a meaningful way and continue toward my goal? My first step was to eliminate any of the buts that were actually not obstacles I needed to deal with right now, such as the home life, the 401k, and even the am I ready? They could all be pushed aside a bit until we examined the more urgent buts. Most any retirement plan can be rolled over into another plan without too much trouble or expense, so I don't need to spend time worrying about that right this moment. I am also aware that there are qualified people in the financial planning field who can help with this, so I don't have to do it alone. Two big issues. I am fortunate enough to have a great deal of support at home. Two of us are working toward personal fulfillment in our own ways, and we each strive to support the other. We are both comfortable talking about our dreams and aspirations without fear of being judged. And while not to be ignored, I am at least starting from a good place. So it's a valid but I am also in a good place. So it's not quite as important as it might have been. Am I ready? Oh, well, I know how I feel when I do the work I enjoy, and I know how I feel when I do the work I feel I have to do. So the answer to this but is an unequivocal yes. Finding a suitable replacement for the health insurance is something I will have to do anyway, since the plan I now use is not going to be renewed next year. So this but is not as big as it once seemed. I'm aware that any new insurance will cost me more, so I simply must factor it into my plan so that I'm not surprised by that. The important thing for me to remember is that change is always a possibility and often a probability, whether I choose to stay where I am or I continue toward my goal. Good point there. No matter whether you choose to move or you choose to stay, change still happens. Change still goes on. There are several ways for me to prepare for dealing with the money but. I can start now to market my new business and begin the actual practice. I can make a viable plan for obtaining the clients I will need to succeed. I can chart just what I need to do in each area to promote myself and my practice. Knowing how it feels to do what I love will make the extra hours I spend feel very rewarding while giving me much needed insight. I have condensed my process here, but it was quite a job for me to reconcile with all these buts. In the interest of space, I have given you an overview of the process and you can see how it works, taking each but in turn and learning to view them differently. Learn to appreciate the buts in your mind and the things that are put in your way as opportunities to be creative and proactive. I know what you're thinking. I left out a huge but. The what if but is the biggest one on the list and can stop all progress even after all the others have been put aside, resolved, taken care of. In my experience, this is where I have been stopped so many times. So what am I going to do about this particular but? First, I look at all the possibilities my mind puts up for me. I make a list of all the what-ifs that come to mind. Then I separate the list into two parts. On one side of the page, I list the things that are probably going to come up, and on the other list, I list the items with a very remote possibility of occurring. With a bold felt tip pen, I draw a line through all the items on the remote possibility side of the page, choosing not to consider the possibility of volcanic eruption, earthquake, flood. What can I do to plan for those things anyway? Now, when I look at my page, I see a much shorter list of things I might need to consider as I proceed. Many of these I have already dealt with in working on the other buts on my list. Then I pare down the list even further by deciding which items have already been addressed to the best of my ability. Now I may have 2 or 3 items which are vexing me. Looking at each one, I next have to decide what I might do if one of these what-ifs actually happened. For every plan, there is a plan B, which can still get us to where we want to be. There are more than one route to most destinations. Sometimes the answer can be as simple as changing your actions when encountering an obstacle. What would happen if instead of going around the obstacle, muttering about its inconvenience and all the hurt that it's causing you, you leapt on top of the obstacle and with your arms in the air celebrated the fact that you had subdued it? You have just read a little pep talk that I give myself regularly, because I need reminding that I do have the power to produce the life I deserve and desire. I just have to keep kicking my butts to get there. And that's my view of when your butts get in the way. In our third and final segment of the Oracle Scroll, we take a question from an audience member and draw cards to see if we can provide some insight and direction. And today's question comes from Olivia. And unfortunately, Olivia's question is one that we encounter quite often as readers, and so it's interesting to see how the cards respond. Olivia says, after years of growing apart and basically becoming roommates more than partners, I am feeling like it is time to end my marriage. This is a 20-year marriage. What do you see as the outcome? Well, dear Olivia, major life changes like the one you are contemplating are never easy, and they really should cause us to look deeper into the situation to prevent repeating the same mistakes later on. Before ever drawing cards for you, I had the distinct feeling that the fact that you have asked this question indicates that there is still work to be done. There is still something there for which to fight. I drew 3 cards for you, and they are the 7 of Wands, the Fool, and the Death card. So we're going to start with that last one, the Death card, because it just jumps out and says that it is time for a total remodel of the relationship. This card does not eliminate the possibility that you will choose to end the marriage, but it rather indicates that there is considerable work to be done if it is to survive. The message of the Death card is to clear out the old and make room for the new. This means old attitudes, old expectations, outdated beliefs, they all have to go, making room for new ways of cooperating. The second card that we're going to focus on is the Fool. The message of the Fool is to stay in the moment, stay in this moment, not focused on past disappointments or future doubts and shrugging your shoulders, well, what if? But what is happening right now? What is happening in this moment? The Fool also counsels us to remain unattached to an outcome. And by staying in the moment, we learn to take ourselves a lot less seriously. Clear communication is also absolutely necessary so that each party in the relationship has a clear understanding of the boundaries and privileges of the marriage. The last card, and in this case the most significant card, is the Seven of Wands. Wands are the fire element in the deck. They are the indicators of your greatest passions and motivations. And the Seven indicates a need to creatively visualize your best outcome. The message for you in this situation is to be laser focused on what you want and be very clear about your expectations. How can your partner ever hope to cooperate if you aren't clear as to what you want in this relationship? This card turns the focus back to you and asks you to carefully examine your needs and your desires when it comes to your relationship. Once you have a very clear image of your perfect marriage, then it's time for you both to weigh your options individually. In summary, it is definitely time to clear out the old in this relationship. Letting go of old hurts and disappointments is your first step to living in the moment, which is key to eliminating your doubts and worries about the future. Just as you would toss out moldy food from the refrigerator, you need to throw out the old feelings of distrust in order to move forward. Most importantly, though, you must identify your own needs and desires in order to gain the respect you deserve. To do this important work, you will need to spend some time in meditation and seriously getting to know yourself and what will make you happy. What will make you happy and fulfilled. I wish you the very best of luck, Olivia, and hope things work out very well. Thank you for joining us for episode 9 of the Oracle Scroll. Please, if you're enjoying listening to these episodes as much as we're enjoying putting them together, please share them with your friends, encourage others to subscribe, and we look forward to putting together many more programs in the future. We are working on an idea for what is your favorite way to show compassion to your neighbor, your fellow being, the people you meet in the grocery store, even the people you may pass on a daily basis on the freeway. How do you go about showing your compassion? Please send us your notes on that subject and address them to the oraclescroll@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining us today. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Oracle Scroll. Find us on Facebook at the Oracle Scroll. If you wish to send comments, suggestions, or requests, please address them to theoraclescroll@gmail.com.